Welcome to the introduction of MLA Style and Formatting lesson. First of all, MLA stands for Modern Language Association, and here's a picture of the current MLA Handbook. They are on the 8th edition now. So what is MLA Style? Basically, it is a set of standards, and it pertains to formatting and page layout, stylistic technicalities such as what's the proper way to do an abbreviation or a quotation, citing sources, and also preparing a manuscript for publication. So it boils down to it's a set of standards. Why would someone use MLA Style? Well, when you adhere to a standard, it helps readers of your work focus more on your ideas and they won't get distracted by some sort of unfamiliar or complicated formatting. It also establishes your credibility. Your audience knows that you know how to do proper research. So there's more than just MLA. There's also APA, the American Psychological Association. There's Chicago Manual. There are several others, but MLA and APA are probably the two big ones. MLA is commonly used in liberal arts and humanities courses, like an English class. APA is typically used in the social sciences. So if you took a psychology class, for example, you might be asked to use APA style. Here at Brady, you're only learning MLA Style, no matter what class you're in, because it's a very easy one for students to learn. Later on, you'll also learn APA, and then you'll be asked to switch back and forth just depending on your teacher or your professor. So, how does it look? This is a picture of what writing a research paper usually looks like. You have your computer open where you're maybe writing the paper itself and using some online sources. You might be using some articles that you've printed out. You might be using some books. Next to you is the MLA Handbook, and you would be looking through the MLA Handbook and asking yourself, okay, how do I cite a book? How do I cite an article? How do I cite an article that doesn't have an author's name? How do I cite an article that has 3 authors? And that's how research typically looks. Oftentimes, teachers will just tell you how to do the citation rather than making you look up how to do it. So you might even remember us saying, here's what you put in parentheses. It's because we knew that from reading the MLA Handbook. The MLA Handbook gets super specific. It's very strict. It tells you exactly how many inches or half inches your margins should be. It tells you exactly what kind of indentations to have and capital letters and everything like that. It even will tell you exactly how do you cite a page on a website. And you'll notice there are certain things that have quotation marks and capital letters. There's periods, spaces, things that are in italics, all kinds of commas. You need to know exactly where to put those commas and periods and spaces and capital letters. It even will tell you things like YouTube videos or if you're going to cite a comment on a website. And then it even will tell you how to cite a book. This is what we used to have to look at, and many people still do. They look at their book, their MLA Style Handbook, or it's published online, so you might find it online, and you say to yourself, okay, it tells me that I need the author's last name, comma, first name, period, space, title of book in italics, period, space, publisher, comma, publication date, period. And you would do that, and you would see it, and you would plug it all in yourself. This gets pretty tricky and complicated because you're going back and forth looking at the MLA Handbook, trying to remember the exact order and all of the punctuation marks and capital letters that you need, and it gets a little complex. So lots of websites have been created to help with this. Noodletools is one of them, and I know a lot of times students don't like using Noodletools. And I do agree that it's a little bit cumbersome and it's not the easiest platform. However, Noodletools allows you just to plug in the author's name, plug in the title of the article, plug in the date that you accessed it, and it just spits out the citation for you with perfect formatting. So you would use Noodletools to create our Works Cited page. And you're going to notice that a Works Cited page has a certain look to it. It's double spaced. It's got something called a hanging indent. It has it all listed in alphabetical order. And as you know, the Works Cited page is the last page of the research paper. But You also have been learning that you're supposed to do citations within your research paper. We call those in-text citations or parenthetical citations. So how do you know what you're supposed to put in your paper? Well, it has to do with what's written in the works cited page. So you would always make your works cited page first. Basically, an in-text citation is a breadcrumb trail that leads your reader to the works cited. So here we see that this person is quoting Burkhardt and Morris, page 410. That's the breadcrumb trail that leads readers to find, here's the whole citation. See, this whole citation could never fit inside of parentheses because that would be way too hard for the reader to look at. Here, this quote is from Crown, and I use the breadcrumb trail and I find it in the works cited page. There it is. Okay, so it's this work by Richard Crown. Here's an example of a works cited page for a charity paper. You're going to notice that there aren't a lot of authors' last names because the type of research that people have been doing for their charity papers has been a lot of website research. And we're seeing titles of web pages. Now, if this is my works cited page, and if I said that your works cited page, that you use this as a breadcrumb and you plant that in your paper for your in-text citations, then what would go in the in-text citation or the parenthetical citation in the paper? Well, whatever the first little chunk of the works cited citation is. So in this case, the words about us. You'll notice that this person did actually have, one of her sources was an article, and so we have the author's last name and even some page numbers, and that would go in the in-text citations. But I want to show you what her actual paper looked like. Here's a little screenshot from her paper where she had her direct quote, and there's her parenthetical citation. It's a breadcrumb trail within her paper to lead you back to her works cited page. You'll notice that it's in quotation marks because it's in quotation marks on the works cited page. It has a capital A and a capital U because that's how it is on the works cited page. Even though most of your research for the charity paper is going to be web pages, we still need to teach you how to do citations properly for print sources or articles, even if they're online, that have an author's name, because you're going to be quoting and citing those a lot as well. Think of like The Outsiders, or if we have you read an article. So let's discuss how to do in-text citations for books and articles. Let's first talk about using a direct quote. So here it says, Hallam stated, comma, quotation mark, capital letter. That's very important. The large number of science fiction books that students have read so far shows that they are most engaged in that genre. And that's from page 74. Notice the period goes after the page number. Because I already used the author's name in the beginning of the quote, I don't need the author's name next to the page number. However, in the second example here, I did not use the author's name. I just said research showed, yada, yada, yada. So that means in my parenthetical citation or my in-text citation, I need to include the author's name and the page number. Remember, the period goes afterwards. Think of the in-text citation as part of your sentence. Do not put a comma between Hallam and 74. That's a common mistake, and that's not correct. Just to review, if you've already used the author's name in the sentence, you would not also put it in the parenthetical citation because that would be redundant and incorrect. You would never put the page number in the sentence. So you wouldn't say on page 74, Hallam stated. Page numbers only ever go in parentheses, whereas the author's name could go outside of the parentheses or in the parentheses. So that's when you're doing a direct quote. What if I didn't want to directly quote this line, but I wanted to paraphrase? Here it says, Hallam has argued that students must be interested in science fiction because they've read so many novels in that genre this year. And it's the same idea. I already used the author's name here, so down here, I'm not going to use the author's name. And some students find it surprising, even if you're not using a direct quote, you still actually have to do an in-text citation. And here, we didn't use the author's name. in the sentence, so we did have to include it in the parenthetical citation. So what about in-text citations for web pages, since it seems that a lot of your research is on web pages? Well, on a web page, you might not know the author's name of that page that you're citing. So in that case, you're just going to use the information that you do have, which is the title of the web page. Web pages usually do not have page numbers, so for online web pages, you're not going to have a page number. So here's an example. This is the same works cited page I showed you a moment ago. Notice in the first one, we'll just look at that. It says about us, and that's in quotation marks. Why is it in quotation marks? Simply because that's what MLA has said, that they want web pages to have their titles in quotation marks. So this right here is the name of the web page. This right here in italics is the name of the overall website. A website is different from a web page. And then here's the link to it. And here's the date that this student accessed it. And notice there's all certain types of capital letters and periods and spaces. This was all created for her by Noodletools. All right, so About Us came from, this was the St. Jude's Research Hospital About Us page. She knew that the title of this page was About Us because it said so toward the top. And so later on, when she wrote her actual paper and she needed to put a quote there, you can even see it says the mission of St. Jude Children's Hospital right here, the mission of St. Jude's. So she took this quote and she put it into her paper, and she used quotation marks properly, and then she knew that she needed to use a parenthetical or in-text citation because it was a breadcrumb trail back to her works cited page for her reader to realize where she got her information from. What if you need to add or change information? Sometimes you need to do that so that it makes more sense or so that it clarifies. If you do need to change words in a quotation, a direct quote, you've got to use brackets. So let's look at the original quote here. This is from The Maze Runner by James Dashner. It says, I think he should be put in for a week with only bread and water, and we need to make sure everyone knows about it so they don't get any ideas. And that's from page 155. My readers might not know who he is, and they might not know where he needs to be put in. So I thought it would be better if I made it very clear. So I replaced the word he with Thomas. Now you're not allowed to start replacing words of someone's work unless you put it in brackets. Here it says should be put in. I added the jail cell because I knew that that's what this part of the book was about, and I thought that this would help clarify it for my readers. Again, you cannot add information or replace information unless you put it into brackets. So you might find yourself needing to do that throughout your charity paper because the way it was worded on their website might be in past tense and you might need it in present tense or something like that.